She sat alone in the quiet of her bedroom, holding the divorce papers in trembling hands. The man she gave everything to, her love, her youth, even her body through childbirth, had cast her aside like a shadow. Her nights were filled with tears, her mornings with doubt. But slowly, something inside her began to stir. Oscar Cole was the kind of man people read about in magazines. A billionaire before he turned 35. He owned luxury hotels, private jets, and even a football team. Every time he appeared in public, cameras followed him. People admired his sharp suits, his perfect hair, and the way he walked into a room as if he owned the world. But behind all the glitter and wealth, there was one thing Oscar valued most: his wife, Amelia. Amelia wasn't born into money. She grew up in a quiet neighborhood, raised by a single mother who taught her kindness, patience, and humility. When Oscar met her, she wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't dressed in diamonds or designer clothes. She was volunteering at a children's charity, her hair tied back, her smile warm and genuine. Oscar, surrounded by models and celebrities most of his life, felt something different that night. Amelia didn't treat him like a billionaire. She treated him like a man. And that's what caught his heart. Their love story quickly became the talk of the city, a fairy tale romance, the humble girl who captured the heart of a billionaire. Their wedding was like something out of a movie. The venue was a castle on the coast of Italy, decorated with roses and golden lights. Hundreds of guests attended, but all Oscar could see that day was Amelia walking toward him in her white gown, eyes glistening with love. The media called them the golden couple, and for a while they truly were. Amelia brought out the softer side of Oscar. Behind closed doors, he wasn't the ruthless businessman people feared. He was the man who cooked breakfast for her on Sundays, the man who held her close at night and whispered promises of forever. She gave him something money could never buy: peace. Years passed, and their bond only seemed to grow. Then came the news that would change their lives forever. Amelia was pregnant. Oscar was thrilled. The idea of being a father filled him with pride. He promised Amelia he would take care of her, that she would never have to lift a finger. He spoiled her with gifts, vacations, and everything money could buy. But Amelia didn't care about those things. She only wanted his love and support. Pregnancy wasn't easy for her. She felt sick most days, her body ached, and she often cried in secret, worried she wasn't good enough for the glamorous life she had married into. But Oscar reassured her, at least in the beginning. 9 months later, their daughter was born. She was perfect, tiny fingers curling around Oscar's as he gazed at her in awe. That day, Amelia thought their love had reached its highest point. But slowly, something began to change. Amelia's body was no longer the same as before. She had stretch marks, a softer belly, and tired eyes from sleepless nights. She still smiled with love, but she wasn't the glowing bride Oscar married years earlier. At first, Oscar brushed it off, but as the weeks turned into months, his attitude shifted. When they went to social events, he seemed tense, avoiding holding her hand. He no longer introduced her with pride. Amelia noticed his eyes linger on slimmer women at parties. One evening, when Amelia was getting ready for a charity gala, she overheard Oscar on the phone. She's different now," he said in a low voice. "She doesn't look the same. I can't take her to these events anymore. People talk." Amelia froze. Her heart broke into pieces. She had given him a child, sacrificed her body, her comfort, and still loved him with every breath, and yet he felt ashamed of her. That night, she put on her gown and smiled through her pain. But in her heart, something had shifted too. The man who once promised her forever was slipping away. And deep down, Amelia feared her fairy tale was coming to an end.
The birth of their daughter was supposed to be the happiest chapter in Oscar and Amelia's life, and in many ways it was. The first time Oscar held the baby, his eyes softened in a way Amelia had never seen before. For once, he wasn't the powerful billionaire or the man who commanded boardrooms. He was just a father, staring at a tiny life that depended on him. He kissed Amelia's forehead that day and whispered, "You've given me the greatest gift." For Amelia, those words meant everything. She had endured long nights of pain during pregnancy, swollen feet, and endless doctor visits. She had pushed through her fears and brought their child into the world. She thought Oscar would love her even more for it. But as the weeks turned into months, she noticed subtle changes in his behavior. In the beginning, Oscar was attentive. He stayed home more often, cradled the baby, and even helped with late-night feedings. But soon, work called him back. His world of business meetings, parties, and galas didn't stop for fatherhood. And while Amelia was left at home, nursing their daughter and struggling with her new body, Oscar was back in the spotlight. The paparazzi captured him at red carpet events, shaking hands with actors and models, always dressed in his perfect tailored suits. Amelia, on the other hand, wore loose clothes around the house, her body still healing, her eyes often tired from sleepless nights. She loved being a mother. She loved their daughter with all her heart. But sometimes, when she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. The flat stomach she once had was gone. Her skin bore the marks of motherhood, stretch marks that told the story of the life she had carried. Amelia wasn't ashamed of those changes, but she could feel Oscar's gaze whenever he looked at her. His eyes lingered too long, not with love, but with disappointment. One night, Amelia gathered the courage to ask him, "Do you still find me beautiful?" she whispered as they lay in bed. Oscar hesitated. He forced a smile and kissed her forehead. "Of course," he said quickly, but his tone was flat, empty. And in that moment, Amelia knew the truth. The first time it happened in public was at a charity dinner. Amelia dressed carefully, choosing a gown that covered the parts of her body she was most insecure about. She spent hours trying to look her best, hoping to make Oscar proud. But when they arrived, Oscar walked a step ahead of her. He didn't hold her hand. When he introduced her to his business partners, his voice was rushed, almost embarrassed. Amelia smiled politely, but inside, her heart ached. Later that night, she overheard whispers from a group of women nearby. "Is that really his wife? She doesn't look like the women he usually dates." Her cheeks burned, and when she glanced at Oscar, he looked away, pretending not to hear. That hurt more than the words themselves. At home, things grew worse. Oscar became critical, sometimes cruel. "You should try working out more," he muttered one morning when she walked into the kitchen. "You're not the same woman I married." Each word was like a knife. Amelia cried when he wasn't around, but in front of him she stayed quiet. She didn't want to fight. She wanted to believe that the man she had married, the one who once called her his peace, was still somewhere inside him. But Oscar was changing. Or maybe, Amelia thought painfully, he had always been this way, and she was only seeing it now. The final blow came when Oscar refused to take her to a high-profile event. "It's better if I go alone," he said coldly. You won't feel comfortable there." Amelia knew what he meant. She wasn't the glamorous wife he wanted to show off anymore. She was his shame. She looked at him then, her eyes filled with tears, but also something new, resolve. She had given everything to this man, her youth, her body, her love, and now her child. And still it wasn't enough for him. That night, as she rocked her daughter to sleep, Amelia whispered, "It's okay, my love. Mommy's here. And one day, you'll see, we don't need anyone who can't love us the way we deserve." She kissed her baby's forehead, her heart breaking, but her spirit quietly beginning to rise. Because even in her pain, Amelia knew one thing. This was not the end of her story.
The cracks in their marriage widened with every passing day. Amelia still tried to hold on. She still set the table for two, still waited for Oscar to come home from late-night meetings, still wore the perfume he once said he loved, but she could feel him slipping further and further away. Oscar had become colder, his words sharper. He no longer looked at Amelia with admiration. Instead, he looked at her with silent judgment, as though she had failed him somehow. Amelia told herself it was stress. After all, running an empire came with pressure. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just business weighing on him. It was her, or rather, the way she looked now. The cruelest part was that Amelia had sacrificed her body to bring his child into the world, and instead of seeing her as stronger, more beautiful for it, Oscar saw only flaws. One evening, Amelia tried to bring it up. She found him in his study, staring at his phone. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. He sighed, clearly annoyed. "About what?" "Us. You've been so distant. I feel like I'm losing you." Oscar didn't meet her eyes. "Amelia, you've changed." Her heart sank. "Of course I've changed. I carried our daughter. "That's not what I mean," he interrupted, his voice cold. "You don't look the same you used to. When I walk into a room with you now, people stare, they whisper, and I can't—" He stopped himself, but the damage was done. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "You're ashamed of me," she whispered. Oscar didn't deny it. He just stood there, silent. That night, Amelia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed his words over and over. She thought of the woman she used to be, the bride who walked down the aisle, the wife who believed in forever. And now she was just unwanted. The humiliation only grew in the weeks that followed. Oscar began attending more events without her. Photos of him smiling beside glamorous women filled the magazines. When Amelia confronted him, he brushed it off. "They're just business associates," he said, but she could hear the lies in his voice. One afternoon, Amelia went to one of his hotels unannounced. She wanted to surprise him, to remind him that she was still here, still fighting for their marriage. But when she entered the lobby, she saw him walking in with a stunning woman at his side. He laughed at something she said, his hand resting lightly on her back. Amelia froze. For a moment the world spun. The whispers of the staff, the pity in their eyes, cut her deeper than any blade. When Oscar saw her, his face fell. "Amelia, what are you doing here?" Her lips trembled. "I'm your wife. Remember?" The woman beside him smirked, then walked away, leaving them in a tense silence. That night the argument exploded. "I can't keep living like this, Amelia. You're not the woman I married. You've let yourself go. I need someone who fits into my world." Amelia's hands shook. "Your world? I gave you a daughter. I stood by you when no one else did, and now you throw me away because I don't look like a model? You don't understand, Amelia. My image matters. My reputation matters. People expect me to be seen with a certain kind of woman, and you—" He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Tears streamed down Amelia's face, but her voice was steady. "So that's it. After everything, I'm just disposable?"
Oscar's silence was the answer. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. Cold, heartless, final. Amelia held the envelope in her hands, staring at her name written in bold letters. She had never felt so small, so betrayed. She had given her heart to this man, and in return he had broken it without mercy. That night, as she sat alone with her daughter in her arms, Amelia whispered through her tears, "I'll never let you feel this kind of pain, my love. We will rise, I promise." In that moment, something inside her shifted. The woman Oscar thought he had destroyed was not gone. She was only beginning to awaken. And Oscar, he had no idea that the wife he discarded would one day become the woman he would regret losing forever.
The first weeks after the divorce were the darkest of Amelia's life. She felt hollow, like a ghost drifting through her own home. Everywhere she turned, there were memories of Oscar, the framed wedding photos, the expensive gifts, the smell of his cologne still lingering in their bedroom. But the sharpest reminder was the silence, the absence of the man who once promised her forever. Amelia cried at night, quietly so her daughter wouldn't hear. She cried not just for the loss of her marriage, but for the betrayal of the man she thought would protect her heart. She wondered if she had made a mistake in ever believing in fairy tales. And yet, every morning, when her daughter's tiny hands reached for her, Amelia found a reason to get up, a reason to breathe, a reason to fight. One morning, as she stood in front of the mirror, she caught her reflection and hardly recognized the woman staring back. Tired eyes, puffy cheeks from tears, a body that bore the scars of motherhood. But beneath it all, she saw something else that Oscar had overlooked. Strength. "This is not the end of me," she whispered to her reflection, and she meant it. Amelia decided she would no longer live in Oscar's shadow. If he couldn't see her worth, she would prove it to herself. Slowly, step by step, she began to rebuild. At first, it was small things. She started walking in the mornings with her daughter in a stroller. Then she joined a fitness class, not to become the size Oscar wanted, but to feel healthy and strong for herself. With each passing week, her energy returned, her laughter returned. She felt alive again. But Amelia knew she couldn't rely on fitness alone. She needed independence. She needed to stand on her own 2 feet. She had once put her career on hold to support Oscar, but now it was time to focus on her own dreams. She dusted off her old degree in interior design, something she had always loved but never pursued seriously. With determination, she began taking small projects, redesigning a friend's living room, consulting for a local cafe. Word spread quickly about her eye for beauty and detail. Soon, more clients came calling. Amelia discovered that she was more than just Oscar's wife. She was Amelia, the creative, intelligent woman with a vision, and people respected her for it. Months turned into a year, and Amelia's business grew. She balanced motherhood and work with grace. Though it wasn't easy, every success reminded her of her strength. Her daughter became her biggest motivation, watching her mother rise from the ashes with quiet admiration, even if she was too young to understand. The world began to notice, too. Articles were written about Amelia, not as the ex-wife of a billionaire, but as a rising entrepreneur in her own right. Her photos appeared in magazines, her smile radiant and genuine. People admired her not for perfection, but for resilience. And while Amelia flourished, Oscar's life was taking a different turn. The glamorous women who had once surrounded him drifted away. The excitement of shallow relationships faded.
His business empire was still strong, but his heart was empty. In moments of solitude, he found himself scrolling through old photos of Amelia, their wedding, their daughter's first birthday, the candid shots of her laughing in their kitchen. He remembered how she used to look at him not as a billionaire, but simply as a man. And for the first time, Oscar began to wonder if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. But by then, Amelia was no longer the woman waiting at home for him to love her. She was standing tall, shining in her own right, her scars now symbols of survival. One evening, as Amelia stood on the balcony of her new home, watching the sunset with her daughter by her side, she smiled. "Mommy?" her little girl asked, tugging her hand. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you happy?" Amelia looked down at her daughter, her eyes soft but filled with pride. "Yes, baby, I'm happier than I've ever been." Because for the first time in years, Amelia was not defined by Oscar's love or rejection. She was defined by her own courage. And this was only the beginning.
Oscar Cole still had everything most men could only dream of. His business empire thrived, his bank account overflowed, and his name carried weight in every elite circle. But late at night, when the parties ended and the applause faded, Oscar found himself alone in his penthouse, staring at the city lights with a hollow ache in his chest. He had gotten what he thought he wanted: freedom from a wife who no longer fit his image. Beautiful women still smiled at him, eager to stand by his side, but none of them stayed for long. They came for the money, the fame, the glitter, but never for him. Oscar noticed it during dinners, during trips, during conversations that never went deeper than fashion or gossip. They didn't care about his dreams, his fears, or his sleepless nights. They didn't see him as Oscar, the man. They saw him as Oscar, the billionaire. And every time, when their eyes gleamed at the sight of his credit card, but dulled when he spoke about anything real, he thought of Amelia. Amelia, who once listened to him talk about his childhood fears. Amelia who laughed at his terrible jokes in the kitchen. Amelia who held his hand not because the cameras were watching, but because she simply loved him. But Amelia was gone. At first, Oscar assumed she would fall apart without him. He expected her to call, to beg, to cling. But instead, she disappeared from his world completely. She moved out quietly, built a new life, and didn't look back. Months later, he saw her name again, but not in connection to him. She was featured in a magazine article. From broken to bold, how Amelia Cole built her own success. The article praised her new interior design firm, highlighting her talent, her strength, and her journey from heartbreak to independence. Oscar stared at the photos. Amelia looked radiant. Her smile was confident, her eyes bright, her presence commanding. She looked nothing like the broken woman he had left behind. For the first time in years, Oscar felt something unfamiliar: regret. The regret deepened when he saw her at a charity event months later. She wasn't standing beside him this time. She stood on stage as the guest speaker, her voice steady, her story inspiring. The crowd applauded her courage, her resilience, her success, and Oscar, sitting in the audience, realized the bitter truth. Amelia had become everything he once underestimated. After the speech, he tried to approach her. "Amelia," he said softly, almost hesitantly. She turned to him. For a moment, their eyes met, and he saw a flicker of the woman he once loved. But then she smiled politely, the kind of smile reserved for strangers, and said, "Good evening, Oscar." Her tone was calm, respectful, but distant. She had moved on. Oscar's chest tightened. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to ask for another chance. But the words caught in his throat. He watched as Amelia excused herself, walking gracefully toward her daughter, who was waiting with a nanny. The little girl laughed as Amelia picked her up, wrapping her arms tightly around her mother's neck. It struck him like a blow. Amelia and their daughter were building a life together, and he wasn't part of it. That night, as Oscar sat alone in his empty penthouse, surrounded by luxury but drowning in silence, he realized something money could never fix. He had traded real love for image. He had thrown away the one person who saw him, truly saw him. And now, he couldn't buy her back. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, but the ache inside Oscar only grew. The parties didn't fill it. The glamorous women didn't cure it. The business victories didn't erase it. Because when the world went quiet, all he could hear was Amelia's voice, soft, gentle, filled with love, and the memory of the day he let it go. Oscar Cole, the billionaire everyone admired, was crumbling inside. And deep down, he knew the truth. He had lost the only treasure that mattered.
Years passed, and the world no longer spoke of Amelia as Oscar Cole's ex-wife. She had built a name of her own. Her interior design company became one of the most sought after in the country. Her work praised for its elegance and creativity. She was invited to conferences, featured in magazines, and admired not for her beauty alone, but for her strength, vision, and heart. Most importantly, Amelia had found peace. Her daughter was growing into a bright, confident young girl, and Amelia cherished every moment of watching her blossom. They shared laughter, adventures, and love, things money could never buy. For Amelia, success wasn't about wealth or fame. It was about freedom, dignity, and the quiet pride of knowing she had risen from the ashes of betrayal. But fate has a way of bringing the past back when you least expect it. One crisp autumn evening, Amelia attended a prestigious gala where she was being honored for her achievements in design and philanthropy. She wore a simple but stunning gown, her hair swept elegantly to the side, her confidence radiating more powerfully than any diamond could. As she mingled with the crowd, she felt a pair of eyes on her. Turning slightly, her breath caught for a moment. Oscar. He stood across the room, still handsome, still dressed in his impeccable tailored suit. But something in his eyes had changed. The arrogance was gone. What remained was a shadow of a man, haunted, humbled, and quietly broken. When their eyes met, the room seemed to fade away. Oscar walked toward her, each step heavy, as if carrying the weight of all his mistakes. "Amelia," he said softly, his voice trembling, "I look incredible." Amelia smiled politely. "Thank you." He hesitated, searching for words. I've missed you. I've made so many mistakes. I threw away the best thing I ever had. If I could turn back time—" "Stop," Amelia said gently, her voice steady but firm. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I do mean it," Oscar insisted, desperation in his eyes. "I was a fool. I was blinded by pride, by image, by what other people thought. But none of it mattered. You are all that mattered." For a moment, Amelia studied him. This was the man who had once made her feel like a queen, and then discarded her like she was nothing. Years ago, those words might have broken her, or maybe even swayed her, but not now. "Do you know the difference between then and now?" Amelia said quietly. Oscar frowned, waiting. "Back then, I needed your approval to feel worthy. Today, I don't." Her words cut through the air like a blade, but they were not spoken in anger. They were spoken with peace, with finality. Oscar's shoulders slumped. He looked at her the way a man looks at a priceless treasure he can never have again. "Is there any chance?" he asked, his voice breaking. Amelia shook her head. "No, Oscar. You had me when I loved you with everything I had. You had me when I was at my most vulnerable, and instead of cherishing me, you shamed me. You didn't just lose me, you destroyed the version of me that would have ever gone back." Tears burned in Oscar's eyes, but Amelia didn't waver. She turned to leave, but then paused and looked back one last time. I hope one day you understand that beauty isn't about perfection. It's about love, kindness, and strength. You threw that away, and now I've built a life where I will never let anyone make me feel small again. With that, Amelia walked away, her head held high, her gown flowing behind her like the trail of a queen. The crowd parted as she passed, not because she was the ex-wife of a billionaire, but because she had become a woman of undeniable power and grace. Oscar stood frozen watching her go, the truth crashing down on him with unbearable weight. He had spent his life chasing an image, but in the process, he had lost the only person who had ever seen him as more than a billionaire. And Amelia, she didn't look back. For her, the sweetest revenge wasn't making him suffer. It was living a life so full, so radiant, and so unshakably strong that his absence didn't matter anymore.
And that, my friends, was Amelia's story. A reminder that true beauty is not found in perfection or in the opinions of others. It's found in strength, in love, and in the courage to rise again after heartbreak. Oscar may have had money, power, and fame, but he lost the one thing money could never buy: a heart that loved him unconditionally. Amelia's sweet revenge was not anger or bitterness. It was living, thriving, and showing the world that dignity and self-worth are priceless. So, to anyone listening tonight, never let anyone make you feel small. You are worthy, you are strong, and one day your rise will silence every doubt. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that touch the heart. Until next time, take care, and remember, your value is never defined by anyone else's eyes.